لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله، اللهم لعنهم جميعا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Contentment allows you to live without the pressures of life, because contentment allows you to live with what you have. Why should I be content? What do I gain from this? If you remember on the second night when we spoke about the good life, we mentioned that the verse says, من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة. So whoever does good or righteous acts and they are believers, be they male or female, and they are believers, Allah will grant them, Allah will give them a good life, a good agreeable life. The secret to having this good agreeable life is what? Contentment. Being content, being happy with what you have. As we mentioned, the recitation of Dua Qumail, وَتَجْعَلَنِي بِقِسْمِكَ رَاضِيًا قَانِعًا, that, oh Allah, make me with what you have, the provisions that you have given me, what you have provided for me, what you have given me, my cut in life, my portion in life that you're going to give me, make me pleased with this, as in I accept this, and that I am content with this, that I am satisfied. Being content is being satisfied with what you are given. Because people are too busy chasing what they don't really need. As the narration says, فَمَنْ عَقَلَ قَنِعَ بِمَا يَكْفِي. Whoever has intellect has conviction with whatever is sufficient. Whatever's sufficient. What's sufficient? If you take a look, we go right down to the bare minimums of what's sufficient, what we really need in life, not what we want, what we really need, the bare minimum. Whoever has any intellect has conviction and is satisfied with what is sufficient for them. وَمَنْ قَنِعَ بِمَا يَكْفِيهِ اسْتَغْنَى. And whoever, and we'll expound on this as we go further, is satisfied with what is sufficient, استغنى means they become rich. As we use in the word rich, what does ghani mean? When we say someone's ghani, hada ghani, we mean he's needless. He doesn't need. He doesn't have needs, so we call him ghani. Istaghna in the real meaning of the word. The real meaning of the word is not to be in need of anyone except Allah Azza wa Jal. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَقْنَعْ بِمَا يَكْفِيهِ لَمْ يُدْرِكَ الْغِنَى أَبَدًا. And the one that is not satisfied with what is sufficient, see, the one that's not satisfied will never be satisfied, ever. They will never be rich, ever. They will always be in need. Have you ever heard of a billionaire that's unemployed? You know, could you imagine like Jeff Bezos says, all right, I've got $132 billion, whatever he's worth. After his divorce even. Did he get divorced yet? After his divorce, he's half that, poor guy, down to, 66 is it now? 60? Yeah, 66 billion. 66, poor guy, $66 billion. After even that, would you think Jeff Bezos says, all right, let's sit back and let someone else take care of this? I'm too busy counting my money. No. They never stop, because a human can never be satiated. And this is why contentment is essential. You're never going to be full. If you take a look, do you ever watch any of those documentaries on the animal kingdom? They say that I think the lion consumes 30 to 35 kilos of meat and then they become satiated. That means they say that if a duck walks past the nose of a lion after they are full, the lion doesn't care. They've had their fill. They hunt to eat. Once they eat, they're satiated. They go to sleep. Lions pretty much 20 hours of the day, all they do is sleep or mate. That's all they do, and they go to sleep. That's about it. And they hunt when they want to eat. As for the human's never fulfilled. So it's an ongoing process from this. Now let's take a look. And our discussion here is about a summary of the benefits of contentment. What are the benefits of being content? The narration here says, Al-qana'atu tajtami'u. So it brings about all these benefits. It combines these benefits. Ila siyanatin. First one, it says, Ila siyanatin nafs. And that's the first point we'll go over. The first thing that qana'a gives, siyanatin nafs, basically means that self-preservation. You preserve yourself. Self-protection. You give yourself this insurance, this protection, this preservation. How do you preserve yourself? Because when you're content, you don't become brash. You don't become foolhardy. You don't go, these get-rich-quick schemes. When someone, for example, turns up and says, listen, I've got some counterfeit notes. I'll sell you $10,000 worth of counterfeit notes for $2,000. And you think, wow, this is a good opportunity. I want to make $8,000 out of this. Because you're not content with what you have. $8,000, all I do is I put in a $2,000 investment, I get $10,000. You don't think to yourself for a second, counterfeit is what? It's a federal crime. It's not a state crime. It's a federal offense. You don't think of that. You think, how am I going to make $8,000? One big turnover. Take a look, for example, at the Bali 9. Do you remember the Bali 9? This isn't something that just occurred yesterday. This is something Australians have been doing for a long time. And they're not all stupid. They're not people that have been conned into this. Some of these people understand. They go into Indonesia, one of these countries where you enter the country, for example. In these countries, they have signs that say, drugs are death. That if you drug traffic, you will be executed. You don't need to tell someone this twice. If someone tells you drugs are death, you wouldn't risk this. But if you don't have this contentment, you don't have this conviction, this satisfaction in life, you'll take this risk. And the Bali 9, that's what they did. And what they were doing it for is what kills you. They were doing it for small amounts of money. When I was a child, I remember the first case that I remember in the 1980s, the Barlow and Chambers case. That was really huge in Australia. That these two young Australian men went and they were bringing in heroin back. I think at the time it was in Thailand. I think where they got caught. Malaysia. Thank you very much. One of the Southeast Asian countries. Now, when they were caught, it was found out that they were doing it for such a small amount of money. A small amount of money. Because they were not getting content with this. I remember one of my nephews, he was working with a rugby league player. A former rugby league player. This guy used to play for the West Tigers. His name was Tim Simona. So this guy was on a $600,000 a year contract. How many of you make $600,000 a year? And then he got caught betting on games. He wasn't content, and then he ended up working just a normal trade or a normal labouring job because he took a risk and he lost a massive contract like that. You lost a huge contract because he was doing what? He wasn't content with $600,000 a year. He wasn't content with that. You may think to yourself, that's his case, I'd be different. No. If I'm not content with what I have now, Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If I'm not content with what I have, I will never ever be content. Ever. The second thing that contentment gives you is Azz al-Qadr. Azz al-Qadr. That basically you're giving yourself worth, giving you good reputation, giving you prestige. That you are a reputable person, you are someone of distinction, you're a distinguished gentleman. People look at you as someone that is of good reputation and character in this world. In fact, one of the narrations says, ثَمَرَةُ الْقَنَاعَةُ الْعَزِّ. The fruit of being content is honor, is dignity. When you're content, you do not need to degrade yourself for $1. You do not need to grovel at anyone's feet to get $1. You do not need to beg anyone. You do not need to, as we say in Lebanon, they used to say, بِمَسَّ which was pretty much what they actually meant, is because the rich people used to have long gowns, and there'd be people that would clean the bottom of their dress, of their gowns, in order to get a bit of bakshish, to get a few measly coins thrown at them. So I don't need to grovel because I'm content with what I have. I don't need to degrade myself. As one servant of the Sultan once went down by the sea and he found a abid, someone that was a servant of Allah. And this person was poor, he wasn't rich. And he found him, he was removing kelp from the water, like seaweed, to eat it. That's what he was eating. So the servant of the Sultan said, if you come and serve the Sultan with me, you won't have to eat the kelp. You won't need to resort to eating kelp. So the servant of Allah Azza wa Jal turned to the servant of the Sultan, said, if you eat the kelp with me, you will not have to degrade yourself to become a servant of the Sultan. See, I'm content with what Allah Azza wa Jal has given me in provision, so I do not need to lower myself, nor grovel in this way, or bring myself down, or abase myself in any way, shape or form. In fact, in another narration, staying on this idea of reputation and prestige, and giving you this nobility, من قنعت نفسه أعانته على النزاهة والعفاف. Whoever has qani'ah, who's content, who has this conviction, it helps them with what? It helps them with having purity and modesty. And this is acquired through contentment. How so? If you notice, people do really deranged things. They have really sick fetishes. One lead singer of an Australian band was found hanging from the back of a door, performing some act upon himself, because he was trying to reach the ultimate climax in his head by strangling himself while performing an act. You imagine, this is how they found this guy dead. He was hanging. Another actor who was back in the 1960s, used to be in a famous television series called Kung Fu. They found him strapped from the wall, hanging, and he was doing some really weird fetish that they hadn't thought of before. But what I noticed in both these acts, they were done in hiding. They were still done, but they were done in hiding. Even still, as much as it brought them to do these acts, they knew they had to conceal them from society. You know, although you watch your movies, if you watch your television shows and your movies, they make it out that everyone is promiscuous, everyone's lewd, everyone's having relationships with anybody. But this isn't the case. Because in reality, people are averse to this. They turn away from you. And when you're exposed, even if you look at politicians, one case, remember Barnaby Joyce and what happened with him. Anyone that gets found out, they usually resign and walk away. They can't just stand there. As much as they try and promote lewdness, as much as they try to promote lewdness and being licentious, and especially the LGBT movement, I forgot all the other letters in the alphabet that they use. Remember, I know that cricketer that came out, that James Faulkner. Anyone remember the incident where he put, I think, a picture on his Instagram, and he said, me and my boyfriend, I think it was Jim Rudd or something, he's me and my boyfriend celebrating together. So then the newspaper said, oh, this guy's come out that he's gay. And immediately he came out and ungayed himself. He said, hold on, this guy's my best friend. We've been living together for 5 years, but we're only friends. There's nothing more to it, because he realized his career would come on a decline. So if I don't head in this direction at all, I have a reputation even amongst the non-believers. The other thing that qana'ah gives you in the narration, in the same narration that I mentioned, is they mention here tar' mu'anil istikthar, that it casts away the storage of excess. You know, people store things. You know, the money hoarders. They're always stressed and preoccupied with accumulating wealth. I don't know if have you met those begging landowners? Have you met those people? The ones that when you meet them, they cry so much about how impoverished they are. This person's so impecunious. This person hasn't got a cent to their name. And you start thinking, I'm going to give this person sadaqah. And they've got so much land. They are so wealthy, but the way that they speak, you actually feel sorry for them. This poor guy is dying. You know, his 50-bedroom mansion's not making him happy. How can I help this person out? These people that don't stop, and they abase themselves in public. These people that don't have financial hardships, but they act like they have financial hardship. Why? Because they don't have this contentment. And if you don't have this contentment, what happens? All you're doing is stocking for who? The Imam alayhi salam says, يَبْنَ آدَمْ مَا كَسَبْتَ فَوْقَ قُوتِكَ فَأَنْتَ فِيهِ خَازِنٌ لِغَيْرِكَ. O son of Adam, whatever you accumulate, whatever you stock up, whatever you hoard, that's more than that you need, you are stocking it up for who? You're stocking it up for other than yourself. And don't think, when you do this, the other than yourself is like you. You know, I don't know if when you were kids, you ever watched The Lion King. You see that scene, the opening scene where the father's with the son, and then he says to the son, he says, one day, the sun will set on me being a king, and it will rise with you as the king. And then everything will be yours. And then the child walks around and says, everything that the light touches, you know, still he wants as much as he can. And you look at it, it's a vast open land, and then what does the child say? He says, what about the shadowy place? Do I have that too? Like, everything's not satisfied, he wants the shadowy place. We laugh at this, you know, when we were kids, and everyone has that last bit of Nutella, and then there's the jar for you to scrape. Although the Nutella's in your hand, the sandwich, you want the jar. You want to scrape the jar as well, because you want that extra. You're not satisfied, you want more. You're not satiated. You want even more, as much as that I can acquire before I leave. So it keeps me involved in this. The other thing that the Imam says about contentment, he says it casts away what? Also, التعبد لأهل الدنيا. It takes away worldly bondage or enslavement, that you are no longer enslaved to the people of this world. Don't make yourself into someone, as I mentioned in the story about the servant of Sultan. Don't make yourself enslaved to the people of this world. Because when you are after this world and what is in this world, you're not content with what you have, you become at the liberty and you become at ransom to the people of the dunya. And thus what happens? Everyone's miserable. You look around, people aren't happy. Why? Because they're preoccupied in what? In hoarding wealth. How many of, look, this is the month of Shahr Ramadan. How many of you have been seeing each other? This is Shahr Ramadan. Forget about before Shahr Ramadan. I'm talking about especially those that are submerged in this world. You're fully immersed in this world. That you see other people. You say hi to other people. How often when someone calls you, you always say, all of you say, I'm very busy. Everyone's just too immersed in this world. They're too submerged in this world. If you think that's the way it always was, it wasn't always like this. It wasn't always like this. It only becomes like this when people want more and more. They keep wanting. They're not content with that one mortgage. They want the second. They want the third. And then you see these people, they're stressed out. What are you stressed out? He says, I need to make sure my child has a home. I need to make sure that my child is a home owner. And if he's not, it's the end of the world. He's going to die. It's going to be the end of the world. That's the kind of life. Yet you look at them all, they're all miserable. No one's happy. Miserable. They live a life of misery. They're always upset. They're not content, and they want. Don't think they will be content. Even if every child has 2 or 3 houses, they won't be content. They want more. Why? Because they were not content from the outset to begin with. Then the Imam, at the end of the narration, where he mentions about the benefits of contentment, he says, وَلَا يَسْلُقُ طَرِيقَ الْقَنَاعَةِ إِلَّا رَجُلَانِ. That when he mentions in this narration that only 2 men or 2 types of people are the ones that go along the path of this contentment. And he says, متعلل يريد أجر الآخرة أو كريم متنزه عن لئام الناس. So the first one that is mentioned in the narration, one of 2 men. One who is preoccupied with the reward of the hereafter. Someone that's content with this world because they only use this world as what? As a means. As a means for the hereafter. This world is dispensable for them. It's disposable for them. It's, expendable for them. It's not something they look at. They look at it as something transient and something that they do not need. They use it only as a means for the hereafter. So become zahid for dunya. He doesn't care about the dunya. And this is someone that has qana'ah, because that's all it's for, nothing more. I've used its purpose. I don't reuse it. It's finished, and that's all its purpose is for. The second type is a generous person who doesn't look into the hands of others. This is something that is anti-qana'ah. It's against being content and having conviction. When I look into the hands of others, the people that are too preoccupied with keeping up with the Joneses. They worry about what the other people have. They always look at, what does my neighbor have? How are other people living? What can I put up? If you take a look at, one of the biggest tragedies in the world today, the tragedy of plastic surgery. So everyone wants to fix themselves as good as possible so they can look better on their Instagram selfies. So they can look better than the other person. Because they're preoccupied and they're too worried about the way other people look. They don't realize all these selfies, forget about the plastic that's been used and it's fake. There's at least 50 shots being taken to get that perfect shot they got. And once they get that perfect shot, then they use all that magic that they use now to make the picture, where they make the unblemished skin and they remove, they start making curves that do not even exist. And then everyone's thinking, how can I look like this? And these are the thoughts that enter through their head. And they're too preoccupied and too worried about being like everybody else. And someone that does not want what others have, does not want what's in the hands of others, is someone that has qana'ah. Because the person that doesn't want what's in other people's hands, they're happy with what? They're happy because all they expect is with what? Is with Allah Azza wa Jal. Thus they live a good life. All they're worried about is with what's in the hereafter. And that's why they're not worried and stressed out about this world. They lose something. This is what this world is transient. I was only meant to have this for a certain time. Everything you have with you is terminal. Your children are terminal. Your wealth is terminal. Your property and your health are terminal. You are terminal. Once I realized that I am in a transient world and at any point it can end, then I can detach myself from this world. And when I detach myself from this world, then I'm happy. Then I have this feeling where I can walk through this earth and I live a good, agreeable and content life. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us a life with conviction and satisfaction. We ask Allah for this happiness in the dunya and for His acceptance in the hereafter. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance of our master Al-Hujjat ibn Al-Hasan Al-Mehdi. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان أو يطلع الفجر من ليلتي هذه ولك قبلي تبعة أو ذنب تعذبني عليه وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وإلى أرواح موتانا وموتاكم وإلى شفاء المرضى بالأخص شفاء الحج أبو علي الحائري رحمه الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع